So, BMW have finally announced the new G87 M2. Now, they haven't actually announced the competition or the CS version yet. The CS will probably come out around about 4 or 5 years time at kind of the end of the life cycle of this car. But it's awesome to see that BMW have now finally announced the new M2. If you're new to the channel, I actually used to have an M2 competition in Long Beach Blue. The channel was mostly built on that actually. I had it for around 2 years. I made loads of content with it and I had loads of fun with that car. So it's cool to finally see that the new M2 is out, and that's kind of why I'm doing this video today. So hello and welcome to the video. As with every kind of new car being announced, I think it's always cool to kind of jump on, talk to you guys and give you kind of my opinion and my impressions of new cars that are coming out. We've done the Lotus Emira. We actually did the M2 when Joe Achilles and Shmee 150 gave it a drive. Back then it was all kind of camouflaged and we saw some driving impressions of it, but it wasn't the finished product. So if you want to watch that video, go click up here to watch that video. And it's actually very interesting to see that all of my predictions that I made in that video are basically true with this car. As suspected, it's heavier, it's more powerful. They did bring a manual box, which is very interesting and good to see. It's come in a ZF gearbox and it's got the S58 engine in. It's basically everything that we knew already from the current G series M3 and M4, but in a smaller package in the M2. So the specs on this are actually really cool. We're pushing around about 460 bhp in this car, which is a massive jump from the 410 bhp in my M2 competition. But it is a lot heavier, so are you really going to notice the extra power? Probably not. On track you're definitely going to notice the differences, and me now being a Porsche GT4 owner, every car I drive I notice the weight of every car. So this being now heavier, it's going to be a little bit disappointing. It does now come with a carbon roof, which we saw on the F87 M2, usually the M2 CS. Usually the CS cars of that generation, they kind of take the same technology and pull it as standard into the new car. So we've got adaptive suspension, which was on the CS as well. That's now standard on the new G series M2. And we've also got the carbon bucket seats that we see in the M3 and M4 of the G series. So they look mega. They're not fixed carbon buckets, so you can recline them if they want to. So they're a little bit more comfortable than the Porsche GT4 or any GT car's bucket seats. So I think I might brave it with this car, and I would probably spec the carbon buckets just because they can recline, they're a little bit more comfortable. You've only got the issue of getting in and out of them, and the kind of side leg bolsters aren't really as bad as the Porsche ones anyway. We've only got 5 colour options, which is a little bit annoying. We've got Toronto red, we've got that kind of baby Smurf blue, black, white, and then kind of like a Brooklyn grey. It's a little bit annoying because the old M2 only really came on 5 colours as well, and the M3, M4 always had more colour options. So I think everyone's going to be speccing the red because it's going to be like how the old M2 was, where everyone went Long Beach Blue, and then the black and the white are kind of going to be the people who don't really want that kind of shouty colour and want to be a little bit more toned down. Behind me you kind of see the spec that I would be going for. I know it's a little bit blurred out, but I've added everything that I would like to it. And interestingly, and with the old M2, there's not really much you can add to the car. Most of the stuff comes standard and you can kind of make a few tweaks here and there. I've added the carbon bucket seats, and now my car is up to £70,000. That is absolutely bonkers in today's world. An M2 used to be around about £50,000 with a decent paid salary and a decent job. You could afford an M2, but now at £70,000, the world has gone mad. My job, it no longer has gone up with inflation, but cars have gone up with inflation, and this is a little bit out of budget. With a £70,000 car, I think you're roughly going to be looking at around about £600 to £700 a month with about a 10 grand deposit. Those are the rumours that I've been hearing for a standard PCP deal at the moment. As we know with all kind of new cars, never really jump on the car straight away when a new model comes out. There won't be any discounts coming from BMW. If you kind of wait a year or so, BMW start churning out a few discounts, and especially if you wait till the last year of a model, BMW really churn out the discounts, and the old M2 was going for £500 deposit, £500 a month at the end. So Everyone was getting M2s at one point, and I'm sure the same will happen with the new G Series M2, where they'll be churning out deposits. But for now, I don't really fancy paying around £700 a month for an M2, because in my head, that's Porsche money, and you can get maybe an M3 or an M4 for that kind of money. But at the same time, M3, M4s are now £80,000, so the world has gone a little bit mad. I actually think that this car will be a perfect kind of replacement for my GT4 if that GT4 were to eventually go. It kind of brings all of the daily aspect of a car that I need, whilst at the same time being a fun driver's car that I know and love and I'm very, familiar with. It's also a new model, so there's plenty of new toys and new things to experience. So I think this would be a perfect car if I was happy spending around about £7,000, £70,000. However, I am still kind of a little bit disappointed with the kind of colour options. I think being used to kind of in the Porsche world now and having so many colours of options and PTS colours that you can do, I would maybe like to see a BMW Individual colour where I can spec something my choice, or I would probably wrap it and go for something completely different just to be a bit interesting. The F-Series M3 and M4 came out before the F-Series M2, and the good thing about how BMW always released the M3 and M4 versions before the M2 is that now that this car is out, we've already seen the S58 platform, and there already are plenty of tuning companies out there that can tune the S58 already. So I'm sure stage 1, stage 2 on this would be really, really fun. It would liven the car up massively. We're already very familiar with the platform. It's basically a smaller baby M4, and that tuning capability is already out there, so we're basically good to go out of the box. Which gearbox would I go for? Well, I'd probably go for the ZF gearbox, and I've said this in other videos where I've driven a G Series M4. The ZF gearbox is absolutely atrocious for just having a good hoon, especially on track. It's slow, it's sluggish, but when you're driving around kind of day to day, it's fantastic and it's nice and smooth. The G Series M4 that belonged to Miltech that I drove not too long ago, you can kind of go up here and watch it, that was tuned to I think 650 bhp, and because the car was so much more powerful and quicker, the gearbox couldn't keep up with the engine power. So now when you kind of tune your engines, you've got to make sure you tune the gearbox as well so it can keep up together. I was pressing the shift button way before the red line, and it would hit the limiter and then shift, and that's kind of how slow the ZF gearbox was. I would still choose the ZF gearbox because the manuals in BMWs tend to be a little bit rubbery. Having owned a manual right now on my GT4, probably the best manual on the market, it does come with its manual problems, and living with a manual right now, half of me kind of wants to go to a paddled box now, because it is my daily and I'd want to have that daily kind of drivability, live with it, take it on track, focus on the driving and the shifting, and just kind of not have to deal with the manual problems. Manual is fun when you're on a really good hoon on a country road, but I think day to day, autos are just going to be the choice that I would go for. So finally, because it's a £70,000 car, it's far too expensive for me to put an order in for a car right now, but I think it will be a fantastic car to buy in about 2 years' time. The competition car will be out by then, and we'll know if there's kind of more power added to the competition car. It will have dropped in price a little bit. We'll no longer really be in kind of a recession, or we'll know more stability in kind of the market and how the world is doing. And finally, there's not really much you can do to spec these cars and change them. The interiors are exactly the same, especially if you go for the carbon buckets. You can't change the colour of the leather or anything like that. I mean, the car came out yesterday, so the configurator might change from this video right now, but as of right now, the comfort seats you can change the kind of leather colours, but the bucket seats, it's a fixed colour, fixed interior, etc, etc. So that means on the used market, most of the cars are all going to look relatively the same, and so when you come to buy a used car, you're not going to have to kind of find the perfect spec, because relatively they're all going to be the same anyway, and you know you're going to get a good car. So I think on the used market in a couple of years' time, it'll be a good car to pick up. It may have depreciated to around about £50,000 by then, depending on the market, depending on how cars are churned out, if there's as many coming out as we'd like to see, etc. You're going to have discounts from dealers by then, the competition car will be out, so I think the right thing to do for me personally right now anyway is to wait 2 years before maybe picking up one of these cars. And I think finally I've got to comment on the looks, right? I think when we saw the spy shots, everyone was a little bit worried. Weirdly at the front here it kind of looks like it's unfinished. I think with a bit of carbon on it and kind of a bit of stance, some springs, some coilovers, give it some spacers, give it a bit of kind of aftermarket modification to it, I think it will look absolutely mean on the road. I think I want to judge my full kind of judgment for the car when I see it in real life. I think it will have loads of presence on the road. I bet it's really wide. It looks like a big car though from watching some of the videos. Again, going back to Porsche, and Porsche's just, it's kind of why it's the pinnacle, it's kind of why they're still building drivers' cars. Porsche are building small, lightweight cars, specifically my GT4. And seeing this now, it just looks so big and heavy. But I do think it will have loads of presence on the road. I actually don't mind the looks. Like I said, the leaks were kind of making people a little bit kind of umming and ahhing, but now that the full car is properly revealed, it actually looks quite good. I quite like the boxy style of it. It's quite good. We finally got an interior update. The interior of my old M2 was from like 2012. That interior had been in the car since the old M135i engine. It was nice to see finally a proper interior. So the interior's had an update, the exterior's had an update, we've got loads of good standard equipment as well. The used market means used cars are gonna be great because there's gonna be loads of options. I think it's gonna be a good car to buy. As with anything, I think it will give it time and you'll eventually all love it. Everyone hated the new G series M3, M4s when they came out. Now people are starting to buy them more and more. You get used to the looks a little bit more, etc, etc. So those are my opinions. Let me know what you think down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Like the video if you like this, and I'll see you later in the next video. So the usual, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you later in the next video.